I hate it when they raise the bar like that. I'm going to disappoint you. And when you look at me, you're probably thinking, fat, old, marketeer, the one who screwed up the world for like 30 years. What is he going to tell us? And the title of my speech was The Good Old Days. Are they really that good? That's the story. So, let's start with the beginning. I don't think the whole talk came to its final go when my editor asked me. He said, like 10 years ago, you wrote an article in the Morgen, which is, you have the Volkskrant here in the Netherlands. And he said, and you were really angry. And the title was, I don't care about the good old days. It really makes me angry when my father used to say to me when I was a kid, you'll see, this is the best part of your life. And from here on it goes downhill. And I refuse to believe him, as I still do. Unfortunately, the man isn't among us anymore. But I think that life in the past was perhaps simpler, but it wasn't better. And that's my central part. And to come to that conclusion already now, I think, okay, let's review our perspectives on the past. There's a big group here, and probably your parents all have what we call photo albums of when you were a baby. By a simple raise of hands, do you know those photo albums? Have you seen them? Yeah, okay. How many of the pictures in there have soiled diapers or measles or crying little babies? We don't do that. We keep the happy memories. You all went on vacation with your parents. Do you remember the night before? The cursing of your father when he had to put one more bag in the car? Do you distinctly remember the smell of that car after 800 kilometers with vomiting children and soiled pants and everything? And there was this specific brand of eau de cologne, which was 4711. It's really horrible, and it was supposed to be a universal panacea for every illness during travel. Those were the horrible moments. Now, we remember the good ones, and that's called the rosy retrospection. It's all nice, it's all cute, but in fact, it wasn't that good. And there's another effect, and I'm going to ask you again, by a raise of hands, who remembers the first time he or she or they had sex? You don't? Oh. I mean, you should be very aware of the people not raising their hands, because they're either liars or they're very bad at it. So in both cases, don't do that. That is an effect which is triggered by dopamine. Every time we have a great experience, and in my particular case, I think my first time when I had sex, I was drunk. But I still remember it was more of a shameful feeling. But in any case, when you have these like really intense new experiences, they are marked and remembered by dopamine, the happiness. I wouldn't call it a hormone, but it's the happiness element that makes you remember it. Those are the good things. When you were a child, you probably had moments where your parents said to you, pull some weed in the garden. Those are not the things that you remember. You can't probably remember how many times you pulled weed in the garden. You don't keep tally of how many times people have put you in the garbage bin at university because of bullying and that sort of thing. And that's the other part of it. That's the selective memory of what we do. We tend to at least push those negative things away. And in the end, we are left with only good memories of the past. A past which wasn't that good at all. But okay. And then we go on. Because that was the past. And now we're in the present. And I have to say, quite honestly, I would not like to be a girl 15 years old right now. And why? Because the peer pressure of those girls and those boys, but perhaps more the girls, to be beautiful, to be this, to respond to certain norms is immense. And that's social media. In the old days, I'm going to use the word, in the old days, it was a very simple code. You had like these glossy magazines, and in those glossy magazines you had pictures of unattainable supermodels. But at least we knew they were fake, and we knew that we were not one of those. Now, I teach in Antwerp, by the way, and sometimes when I have one-on-one coaching sessions with my students, I'm not afraid to say so, I look at them and they come from a catwalk. They are, I mean, they have like 15 layers of Korean face things on them, and every moment, every moment I think, Jesus Christ, they are really beautiful. And what kind of work goes into that girl to become that beautiful? So it's hard for them to be. I mean, we have I have the same with my friends. I am a simple guy. I like beer, I like football, occasionally a book. I'm lying here, but okay. I read more books than you would think. But all my friends, they go to all the major exhibitions all over Europe. They have their vacations on yachts. They are capable of having reservations in all 3-star restaurants that are newly opened. If you judge them on their Facebook activities, and I say to my wife, we are suckers. We can't do anything of that. We are simple people. And they have the real life. And apparently that's not entirely true, but they don't tell you that. So that's the one thing. That's social media. And to make it more complex, you know these kind of graphs, and I'm not going to dwell a long time on them, but what you often hear, we live in very complex and rapidly changing worlds. It is true, and sometimes that can provoke fear and a feeling of, I don't want to be here. And that's where this one important thing kicks in, and that's nostalgia. I'm in love with nostalgia. It's like a warm blanket. It's very comfy. And I think from an individual point of view, there's nothing wrong with it. But we have to know where it comes from. There were these two philosophers, Kierkegaard and Walter Benjamin. And Kierkegaard defined nostalgia as being some sort of positive form of melancholy. And Benjamin went one step further. He said, no, it's fear of alienation and it's fear of losing authenticity. And that provokes something with people. On an individual level, once again, there's no problem. But where it becomes a problem is that it is used, that feeling of nostalgia is used on a societal level where people say, it used to be better in the old days. We had borders. We had no transnational organizations defining what we should or shouldn't do, and we didn't have global problems. We're really very good in our own little country. So you see where I'm going at. That was nostalgia, and the solutions that are suggested on a global level don't work for that sort of things. The world is complex, and you can't address the problems by provoking or by giving simple solutions. We're all always in the pursuit of happiness. And our only option is to make a choice. Are we making a choice to focus on the differences, or are we making a choice towards the similarities? And that's where stories come into play. I'm a firm believer in storytelling. I think stories can bridge differences all the time, and I'm going to try to prove it to you right now. First of all, if we think of this past, present, future thing, we talk about generations. It's an experiment. Think about your parents and your grandparents. I've done the exercise. I've asked older people, okay, what do you think about the way you raised your children? And then I asked the parents, the children, how did you raise your children? Every generation, from the silent generation, the savers, to generation X, Y, Z, you can do the whole alphabet, they all say, we worked harder and we had more values. They all say that. And every younger generation says the opposite of their parents. They say, they're losing it. They don't understand young people. So this is, and that's something that you can perhaps remember, the time we're living in now will soon be your old days. You're very young. In 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you will refer to this period as being, life was simple, I was at university. So let's try, all of us, to make that a better one, to begin with. Coming back to that, intergenerational thinking. I have one example, and I think it goes for everything. On one of those famous holidays, we went to the south of France, and my 3 daughters were in the back of the car. And at one point, one of them said, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, can you put on that old scratchy voice, the guy who sings about his loved one, Martha." I don't know if you know the song, but it's worth looking up. It's Tom Waits. Tom Waits has a song, a love song, Martha. And my children, who at that point were 6 or 7 years old, they listened to it. And they listened to it. Why did they listen to it? Because I explained to them what it was all about. And from then on, they fell in love with Tom Waits. And there's no bigger pleasure now when I go and visit them. They're 30 years old or something like that. And sometimes they just put on Martha by Tom Waits, because they know I love it. And it goes the other way around. My son, because I have 3 daughters and a son, he explained to me what I should like at one point about Eminem. I don't like rap music, but I applaud the creativity. I applaud the way these young people find their own idiom, I would say. And from there on, we talk about music in our house. I talk about Jimi Hendrix and the Doors. They talk about Renaissance, techno, rap, babble. I don't know what they're talking about, but I listen, and I'm getting interest in that. And that's the first thing. You can bridge gaps by telling stories, by listening to stories. And the same goes, and now, in almost any presentation that I do, I talk about my mother. I should have taken a picture here. My mother is 80 years old, and she's one of those persons who at one point says about people from another race or another culture or another ethnicity, yeah, but those are the good ones. Do you remember that quote? It's in Belgium, in Antwerp, it's something that is used. Now she lives in a very small village, and she has a guy living next to her, and his name, you will never forget his name. His name is Lannoo. And Lannoo is a Turkish guy with a beard and a man bun. He's about 2 meters tall. He's a very friendly guy, and he's got a frit shop. So you can buy French fries. And he's living next to my mother. And at one point, he wanted to expand his business and have some new machinery and things like that. And the neighborhood started with a petition, because that new installation was making too much noise, and the people couldn't sleep. And my mother, 83 years old, took the petition and wrote upon it, "If you can't sleep, then you don't work hard enough. He's a good guy, and he knows what he's doing, and leave him alone." From that day on, it's a very strange couple. You have Lannoo, who is yay high, and you have my mother, who is like this. And he puts her groceries in the car and in the apartment, and she goes for a French fry from time to time. And last week, I was parking my car, and I saw my mother talking to the delivery guys, you know, the ones with the bags and the Gucci caps, and she was smoking a cigarette with them. And they were chatting around. I can only hope that it was a cigarette and not something else. She was in a very good mood. But okay, she's open to that kind of experiments. So it strikes me, and I have the same when at university. Okay, I won't say that I'm fluent in Arabic because I'm learning it via Duolingo, but my students appreciate when I'm able to write something or to say something, and it's these little small steps that make the difference. And I think that's my only message right now and here. It doesn't take a lot. Frank Zappa at one point said, you have to have an open mind because the closed ones, they don't work. You have to have the ability to communicate, and it's an exercise. Every time I stand in an elevator, or every time I'm on the public transportation, the elevator is particularly funny because everybody looks up, because you're invading their private space, and so I say, hi, how are you? And then we start talking, and you make friends like that. So communicate, have an open mind, and the absence of fear. Nobody's going to bite you. And that's what we're all talking about. And there's this one quote, I love that one, it's in French. J'ai réinventé le passé pour voir la beauté de l'avenir, from Aragon. And I have reinvented my past to create and to see the beauty of the future. And that is the horizon we should be looking at, and not the one which is inspired by fear and self-defense mechanisms. I thank you.